Hello, everyone. We would like to welcome you to Next 365's presentation on modern bank reconciliation within Dynamics 365. We're going to cover several topics today, but that will not be an in-depth coverage of all of the features and capabilities within the modern bank reconciliation module. We will be covering, doing an overview and understanding of exactly who it is that might benefit from the use of modern bank reconciliation. With us today as a presenter is Van Law. Van is a senior specialist with Next 365 in North America and has 15 years of consulting experience in the Dynamics ecosystem. Additionally, we have Per Skog, who is from our European operations, and he also has 20 years both on the client side as well as on the consulting side in both finance and operations for Dynamics. And today I'm your host, Mike Peterson. I'm a Chief Technology Officer for the North America Next 365 group. I have 25 years of technology experience in ERP and bringing technologies to clients that help them meet their business goals. So who is Next 365? Next 365 is a global organization. We are currently in 9 countries and continuing to expand. We have over 70 experts along with advisory within our organization. And we work on the client side of the implementation and post-implementation. What that means is we're very focused on what the client objectives are. We bring senior specialists such as Van and Per in to do the work and make sure that we are supporting what the client's business outcomes are. Modern bank reconciliation in Dynamics 365. For those of you, I recognize most of you are going to understand what bank reconciliation is, but just in case we have anybody that doesn't, think of bank reconciliation as balancing a checkbook for an enterprise. It's going in and making sure all of your transactions that the bank thinks that you have are transactions that exist within your system. So there's several different ways that bank reconciliation can be accomplished within Dynamics 365. There is still the manual process where you could have individuals going through and marking off transactions that they're completed, that the bank has those transactions, and then adding additional transactions as you go. There is the built-in advanced bank reconciliation, which now has modern bank reconciliation overlaying it, that had capabilities to do some rudimentary matching and some activities within the system. And it allows you to show when you have marked a transaction as already existing within your target system. Many organizations utilize an ISV product. An ISV product is integrated within Dynamics 365, and it makes sure that it is tied in with Microsoft very tightly and exactly updates at the same time as Microsoft updates, things of that variety, and gives you more advanced features and capabilities. And then there are organizations that are utilizing third-party products. And those third-party products are set up to be integrated to Dynamics 365, either with out-of-the-box integrations or potentially with integrations that are created during implementation. There are some challenges around the manual process, just as with any manual process. It's very time consuming, especially with the volume of transactions that have been increasing, and is very prone to human error. 2 other challenges that a lot of people don't think about when you get into manual activities is you're lacking real-time data. Very often people will print out information, and what that means is they're working on the printout and the system continues to move forward while they're working off of those printouts. And then if you have multiple people doing the same work, the process can be extremely inconsistent, even if you set procedures up around that. Some of the challenges with the non-core solutions, the ISV solutions and the integrated solution, is there's a cost involved with having those ISV solutions or with a non-D365 solution. The complexity, the technical complexity goes up with both an ISV solution as well as an external solution. The ISV solution is a much lower risk because ISVs are required to have significant integration with Microsoft and their update cycles. It is additional risk is introduced and much higher with an external system. And then integrations. Again, with an ISV, it is built into the Dynamics 365 system. But if you're using an external system, you have to not only maintain those integrations, but the infrastructure necessary to push the information back and forth between systems. So I'm going to pass this along to Van to start talking about the modern bank reconciliation process within Dynamics. Van?
Thanks, Mike. Microsoft leveled up their reconciliation automation game by introducing modern bank reconciliation. So a automated reconciliation process significantly reduced the need for manual intervention. It minimizes errors and ensure higher data accuracy. Organizations can now reduce the reconciliation cycle, giving them earlier insights into their financial standing. So for us that's already on the the advanced bank rec, both the advanced and the modern bank rec features within Dynamics 365 Finance utilizes industry file formats, eliminating the need for custom development. So when we were doing manual reconciliations, right, bank recs were done biweekly or weekly, depending on the size or the volume of transactions an organization may have. With modern bank reconciliation, we use, or Microsoft uses, the SharePoint infrastructure to allow non-interactive, i.e. batching of bank files into Dynamics 365, giving us the ability to perform more frequent bank reconciliation, as frequently as daily, right? So the ability to perform more frequent bank reconciliation give organizations more up-to-date up-to-date visibility into their cash flow and cash position. Okay. So one of the things that modern bank reconciliation feature brings to the table is the additional clearing actions and matching types that will give us more flexibility and enhancements into our bank reconciliation process. So let's take a look at the matching rules in the system. Okay, so this is the landing page. As most of us will know, in the cash and bank module, I'll bring up the matching rules. So this is the reconciliation matching rule list page, right? This gives us the ability to define the rule to recognize or identify the transactions within the bank statement and match it against the transaction in the cash subledger. I'll create a new rule, and I want to bring your attention to the last four action on the drop down. So the generate customer payment and generate vendor payments allow us to create and post a payment journal when a customer invoice sends us a payment without the settlement, right? So you would use the generate customer payment if you have customers sending you in payments without an invoice reference. So therefore you can do the settlement. A use case for the vendor payment, generate vendor payment, is if you have a agreements with your service provider, a direct debit where they can just withdraw accounts from your bank, such as your rent, your utility, your insurance, right? So what those two action does is that allows you to go in and post the payment for you to record the cash activity without waiting for somebody to go out and find the invoice information and then doing the posting, right? So it gives you quicker access, earlier access to your data. The generate voucher action allows us to record new transaction like bank fees or bank charge interest. Okay, and the last, which in my opinion is the MVP, is the settle customer invoice. And what this does is that it takes what was previously a two-step process and subsuming it into an automated step within the bank reconciliation process. And lastly, the additional, or there's a couple of new matching types. That's going to give us a little bit more flexibility when defining the rules on matching one or more statement lines to one or more cash subledger transaction. Okay. So prior to modern bank reconciliation, the import of the files, right, was a little bit manual. So the files would have to be either downloaded from the bank portal or have it delivered to us in a folder or email to us, and then someone would have to go and upload it to Dynamics 365 Finance, right? So now we have the capability to have the bank files delivered electronically to us from the financial institution and store on SharePoint. And then we can have a batch job to then import the file from SharePoint into the application. For those of us with a technical leaning, the structure may be familiar to you. This feature utilizes the same data management framework to move the bank file after the import into different folders to facilitate troubleshooting if there are issues with the file. Okay, so I have an example here. I have on my SharePoint site, I have a file folder as follows. So I have a bank statement folder with 4 subfolders underneath it. Okay, so I have a main folder that will store my incoming files from the bank, and then I have a completed, an error, and a warning subfolders where after the import, it'll go into those folders. In my main subfolder, I have a file. So let's go into the system. If I go into the cash and bank module and perform the import. So in this case, I'm just going to import a single bank account, right? So in this case, I'm going to, from a drop-down, I'll select Bank of America 02. I'm using the BIA2 file format, right, which is one of the industry's accepted file format. I'll click OK to start the import. Okay, so a couple of things to call out here while the import is going on is that there is a one-time registration that we have to do in order to use the SharePoint integration. And then the second thing is for any service account or user account that will be importing the files from SharePoint, we need to make sure that they have sufficient access to do so. Okay, so notice that in the blue bar, right, it says operation complete. So if I go back to the SharePoint site, you notice that my main subfolder, the file is gone. And if I move over into the completed folder, you can see the file is there, right? So because the blue bar indicates a successful import, and you can see the movement of the files on SharePoint from main to completed. Okay, so I mentioned previously that the settle customer invoice is the star of the show, right? In my opinion. So most of us know that to record a customer payment and perform the settlement, right? You have to create the journal header, you have to select the customer, look up the invoice the payment is applying to, populate the rest of the journal line, and then post a journal. What this settle customer invoice action does is that it automates all of that into a single step and clears the action with the bank statement. And if you're not already aware, in the new release of the 10.0.43, there is a new functionality, a new feature that will give us the ability to reverse the posted payment journal if we find that a mistake was made, so that we can go in and we can correct it. Okay, so I have an example here. I have a customer sending in a payment in the amount of $1,450.25, and there is a invoice, right, with that payment information. So my file, my BIA2 file in this case, captures that invoice information. So I have a rule to find. Let me back up a little bit. So my cash subledger does not have a record of this payment, right? So I have a rule defined that goes out and says, oh, hey, if you see this transaction, and I can define it with a bank transaction code of 165, if you see this transaction, recognize it as a customer payment and perform a settlement because I have an invoice number, right? So my rule goes out, generates the journal, performs the settlement, and then post it. And the workbench itself gives me a link to that journal. So if I clicked on journal previously, it brings me to this customer payment list page, right? So notice that nothing here is different than if we had created and posted this journal entry manually, right? So you notice the rule comes in here and it creates my line. It picked up my customer invoice, it picked up the amount, and it picked up the bank account. Right. So the rule does nothing more than took what was done that would have been a two-step process and then just automate it for us. The same drill down capabilities exist for us to do traceability and then for us to audit, right? So in this case, I'm just going to go to the customer history, right, by clicking on the view detail on my account. And if I go to my transaction history, that last line right there on this list for the amount of $1450.25, that's my payment. And if I go click on view detail, you can actually see that because my invoice number was included in my bank file, my rule, my action, right, the settle invoice, settle customer invoice actually picked up that invoice number and performed that settlement for me. Okay, so I have another example here of the generate voucher. So this is just another way that the application is saying, hey, I found this transaction and I can't find a match for it in the subledger, so I'm going to create a new transaction for you. So think of the infamous non-sufficient fund or any fee that the bank may charge you, right? So another friendly reminder, if you're interested in this functionality in 10.0.43, there is a new ability for you to have some flexibility if your organization have some unique ledger account financial dimension posting combination requirements. This feature does give you a lot more flexibility when defining the posting definition or the posting rules to do that. Okay, so in this example, I have a $35 bank fee the bank has charged in my account. The first time I know about this fee is on my bank statement. So needless to say, my cash subledger does not have this $35 record. So I have a rule defined to identify these types of transactions and to record a new transaction or a transaction voucher for it, right? So like the settle customer invoice, the workbench gives me direct access to this voucher that was created. So if I click on the voucher hyperlink, excuse me. So the voucher hyperlink is going to show me the actual ledger accounting entry that was booked because of my rule. So notice that this is the same form and the same information that gets displayed when I look up the voucher for any transaction. Again, there's nothing new after the automation. The same facilities that exist for us to do any sort of requiring, reporting, any inquiry exist. Can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So modern bank rec does not introduce any new ideas or concept or require a user to learn new skills, right? All it takes is what users usually do manually and automate it. This automation gives us consistency in your workflow, right? Because the system, the application is performing the work. It's done the same way every single time. There's a lower bar to complete the work. Because you automate much of the work, your organization's dependencies on tribal knowledge to do the said work is reduced, right? People can go on vacation, they can, be sick, all right, go on holiday, and the work will not be left undone because nobody else knows how to do it. And finally, management can stay current on the organization's cash positions. Okay, some tips and tricks for optimizing the automation opportunities within modern bank rec. Routinely review the matching rules, right? Is your organization evolving or revolving their banking activities so that you need to refine your existing rules? Are the new opportunities to create new rules to automate some of the new things that you've been doing manually, right? Routinely and consistently import data into Dynamics 365 to maintain accurate financial records. Now we have the ability to do bank recs as frequently as once a day. right? Well, 5 days a week. All right. And then lastly, utilize the out-of-the-box reports and reporting features for insights and continuous improvements, or maybe even as supporting documentation for the automated process for any of the automation steps that you take. And then I'll turn it over to Mike to talk about the customer profile that will benefit from this. Over to you, Mike.
Thank you, Pam. So, who benefits from this? Anybody that's on the advanced bank rec capability right now is going to benefit from modern bank rec because it's going to automate pieces of what it is that you're working on. In addition, any organization that has a lot of repetitive activities that occur, if you have a lot of bank accounts with a lot of different fees that are associated with them, things of that sort, it makes your bank reconciliation a lot more sure. You don't ever miss those fees. You don't ever miss the information that's coming in because you can set rules to do that work. And you can also set up single matching rules to clear a lot of different types of transactions as you're going through. So it definitely simplifies if you have a high volume of the same type of transaction coming in. Some of the things that it won't do are some of the things that you would still likely need an ISV or a third-party solution for. If you're working in lockbox, if you're receiving physical checks into the bank and they're putting it into a lockbox that you're having to import, currently modern bank rec doesn't deal with lockbox any more than advanced bank rec did prior to it. If you have a high number of customers that are paying electronically, very often because of the complexity of this type of work, what you end up with is the need to set up a matching rule for every customer as it comes in. So if you have a high number of customers and all of them or a high number of them are paying electronically, it's very possible that modern bank rec won't work because you'll spend as much time keeping up with those rules and setting up those rules as you would save as you're coming in. And then if you have a multi-invoice settlement, especially a complex multi-invoice settlement where one payment is settling multiple invoices, there can be some challenges associated with that. While there are many-to-many rules and one-to-many rules that are set up, Van showed them while she was going through this, there are instances where that is insufficient to provide what's necessary for matching to be done properly. So, a couple of final thoughts on this. And again, I come at this more from the technical side than necessarily the finance side of the house. But automation in any instance is definitely a positive for organizations. It allows them to not only reduce the manual work, but reduce all the variability that goes into that manual work, and it makes them much more efficient. And it promotes a lot of additional confidence in the outcomes for these particular activities. By automating it, you can do the work much more often than what you could previously. And that, as Van mentioned, allows you to have a much better view into your current cash position. Even up to daily, you can update the transactions that are within your bank account and tick them off within your system to allow you to know exactly what it is that's gone out the door and how much is there and understand what's going on. And that allows you to identify your issues very early. So nobody wants to have a instance where a very large transaction's gone out the door and you have no idea what it is, and then it's a week later until you find out that that's going on. So modern bank rec has finally brought the ability to do that in a very short term in a reasonable fashion. And then the biggest thing is it's included in your license. You're going to get it out of the box. You're going to get it no matter what licenses you have. It comes with your finance license. You don't need to add any licenses. You don't need to change anything that you've got going with your Microsoft subscription. So it allows you to utilize the modern bank rec capabilities directly out of the box with the licenses you already have to use the system. We are going to run some questions and answers here on stuff that might have come in while we were talking. Okay. Pierre, we've got a question on main use cases within Europe. Is it different than North America?
Well, it differs a little bit between the countries in Europe, but in many cases we have very, very good payment identifiers, meaning that even though we have a high degree of electronic invoices and electronic payments, we are able to process them basically automatically from the start. But the really nice thing here is the automatically generating of payment journals and settling the customer invoices. That is going to save tons of time for any client here in Europe.
Okay, thank you. Dan, what kind of challenges and benefits have you seen with customers in large organizations implementing this compared to what they were doing previously?
So I'll speak from a US perspective. That's where a lot of my clients are. So I use a lot of the BIA2 files and notice that traditionally banks don't include a lot of information in the BIA2 file. So a lot of the challenges is finding a way to consistently hit up those data points within the file and build a rule to automatically clear those actions. I would say that's the biggest challenge that I see.
Okay. Here, what do you think the value drivers, the key values are within the modern bank rep? What does it bring into people?
Well, most of what I'm going to say here is actually also relevant for the advanced bank rec, the old version of the bank reconciliation. But I think the key things are that we're able to reduce solution complexity by removing third-party software and integrations from the table. We're able to do a lot of things with out-of-the-box capability. Another really important factor here that I've seen in a lot of clients is the compliance perspective. The fact that we are getting the reconciliations stamped in the system, the bank reconciliation functionality allows us to create exception reports of the reconciliation so we can see what was not done automatically and so on, meaning we have full trace of the entire reconciliation process tied to the bank reconciliation record. So for me, it's the automation, the reduced solution complexity, and the compliance perspective.
Okay, thank you. Dan, we didn't show how the system handles discrepancies if it finds a discrepancy between a bank statement and the company records. How does the system handle
that? So there's a workbench. I don't notice if you notice, but that there's a workbench that includes a grid of the transactions that were imported from the statement, and then there's a grid that shows all of their transactions, based on a cutoff date or up to a cutoff date. So when you run the rules will go and match those two grids together, and anything that match or cleared will be moved to a match view, and then anything that were not matched or didn't comply with the rules are left in the workbench and the unmatched state, right? So that means that someone's going to have to go in and look at what was not matched from the statement and figure out, okay, is it because is a unexpected activity, or the transaction itself, the statement line didn't include enough data points for the rules to clear through. So the workbench gives you that very clear view of what was left to reconcile. And then, your user will go into that and then work through that list.
Okay, thank you very much. So I would like to thank everybody for attending our Modern Bank Reconciliation webinar today. If you feel that modern bank reconciliation is something that your organization could benefit from, please reach out to us here at Next 365 Group, and we certainly are more than willing to have a discussion and around whether or not modern bank rec is something that will help you. Thank you very much, and have a good day.